If you're a parent that has a loved one with addiction issues or potentially a substance abuse problem, maybe they're just drinking a little bit too much and you're a little concerned, or maybe you know that there's something off and they could be possibly using drugs, it's time to get help for yourself. And I tell you why. And I see this happen a lot of time to parents where they sit around and they wait to see how things are going to come out. They can't quite admit that there is a full-blown addiction, or they just simply don't know what to do about it, and they continue to do the things that they know to do, which may not always be the most beneficial and helpful. In the rules according to addiction, there's a lot of things that just don't play out the same way they do in our normal society. And not having been through this, you may not know what some of those subtle different rules and those social contracts. There's a whole language that goes involved with people that use drugs or substances. There's a lot of guilt, shame, and I see a lot of parents they sit around and they get really hopeful that maybe each event that happens is the event that's going to make them wake up and start something or change their life, basically. And then it just doesn't happen. And then it just doesn't happen. And things start progressing way out of control, and to the point that parents can often just find themselves really lost and confused. So my name is Jennifer Maneely, and I'm an addiction strategist, and this is what I work through parents with is understanding the language and the rules that addiction plays out. And it can be a really dangerous thing. And the best thing to remember for yourself, if you do have someone that is suffering through some of these issues, is that they aren't themselves. They aren't the kids that you raised. You taught them everything that was what you felt like was right. So you taught them and you raised them in all of the right ways, and yet they still come out having some addiction issues. And the biggest thing to remember about that is that this isn't about parenting. So addiction has nothing to do with the way you parented them and the way you continue to parent. But sometimes when they start to get to be an adult, we still want to kind of come in and parent the same ways, or maybe there's this little subtle voice that says you have to make up for the things that you may have not done as well as you wish you had. So hindsight's always 20/20. And I haven't really met a parent yet that has a grown child that doesn't look back and go, man, I really wish I had done that differently. But that is not the reason for your loved one's addiction. And this is why it's really important for you to get help, is to really understand what is really going on with your son or daughter, so you can really know how to help them. This can be a really dangerous world, and a lot of people can do really bad things even though they're not bad people. I'll give you an example, and this is a real example. I asked the family if I could use this story because I think it really would help understand what it is that you're up against. And your first instinct is going to be, oh, my kid would never do that. My kid would never be that person. They're not that bad or whatever. And I want to warn you against starting to think like this, because addiction is a very progressive disease. Oftentimes it doesn't start with the extreme stories that you hear, but we progressively get worse. And a lot of times what ends up happening is that's when parents will sit around and they just wait to see if everything's going to get better. And each event, like I had mentioned earlier, each event is all about, well, maybe this is the wake-up call they need. And in the meantime, what's important is that you gain the internal strength and you learn the boundaries that you need to set in order so that if it does go to the extremes, you're better prepared to handle this, because when we don't have a clear understanding of what addiction can turn a person into, then we start running into more of those extreme stories that a lot of times we hear. So if your son or daughter does have substance abuse, they are just as likely to have something like the story I'm getting ready to tell you happen as anybody. And I know that's really hard to hear. And when you hear the story, that's going to be your reaction, is you're going to think that there's no way that my son or daughter could ever do this. And so I wrote a book. It became a #1 bestseller. It's called Dear Parents: Strategies to Help Your Loved One Through Addiction. And one of a person that I know actually reached out to me to get this book. You don't have to. You can find it on Amazon, or you can go to my website and get it for free on my website. That's maneelyconsulting.com, MANEELY. But I met up with her and I gave it to her, and she was having an issue with one of her family members. She had kind of became a caretaker because this young boy, he lost his mother, and the way that he lost his mother was very traumatic. And I hate telling this story, but I'm going to do it because I think it's going to help. I think it's going to help you. And what happened is, a few years ago, there was a son. He got really bad on meth. And it didn't start that way, but it ended that way. And while he was on meth, he ended up, and I don't want to get into too many details because I might get some of the details jumbled up, but here's the biggest picture. He ended up killing his girlfriend on meth. And I'm sure that he didn't mean to. He was kind of lost in his drug addiction, and he ended up killing his girlfriend. He did end up going to jail, but then his mom and stepfather, I think, ended up bailing him out. And then during the time that he ended up getting bailed out of jail, which sometimes is the right thing to do, and sometimes it may not be the right time. Sometimes the best place for them to be is in jail. But he goes to jail, they bail him out, and then they start getting suspicious and they confront this person, and he ended up killing both of them. And then he really, he went into jail, and a couple of years later, before his sentencing, he ended up killing himself. And this is a horrible, horrible story. And it's something that I know you're probably going, well, that's really extreme, and my son or daughter would never do anything like that. And you're right to an extent. Your son or daughter that you know them to be wouldn't do something like that. But your son or daughter that is on drugs, sometimes they don't act the way that you know them to. And these extreme stories do end up happening. And these are the dangers of what it is going into a world that you may not fully understand, and you don't know how to deal with the kinds of boundaries and what's in the best interest for them and for the protection of yourself, because this is a very dangerous place to be. And I say that, and I want to say this, and it really hit me very much as to why I continue to do what I do and help the parents more than the person that has the addiction, is because they're the ones that need the resource to learn how to manage themselves through when someone is in the depths of their addiction, so that they can protect their kids and they can protect themselves. And when I met up with this person who had kind of became the caretaker of the younger son, she looked at me and she goes, I just wish the mother that ended up getting killed, I just wish she knew you way back when, because I think she'd still be alive. Because we all kind of tried to tell her not to bail him out of jail that time. And I think that if she had gotten help from you, she would still be alive, and he may be too. He may be in jail for, but I think that's the point, is it didn't have to get that bad. And there could have been a lot more earlier intervention before it ever got into this extreme. And that would have been up to the son. He may have still done all of those things. We can never know. And that's the thing is when a person starts getting help, we can never really know what the outcome would have been if they had not gotten help versus if they did get help. But sometimes we have to let the outcomes go, because we're not responsible for what the outcomes are. The responsible part is just really focusing on getting the help that you need to be the kind of person that you may need to be to face something like this, or if there is a progression. So I was just talking to someone, and I'm like, a lot of times parents end up letting hope get in the way of reality. And I'm not saying that hope is a bad thing. Hope is a great thing. And I think every parent should keep their hope and keep their faith alive. But blind hope without really looking at the reality of the situation that you're in, and then taking actions to do something about the reality that you're really in. Keep the hope, but don't let it blind you to what it is that you're facing. A lot of times, the people that are dealing with the substance abuse issues, they're going to tell you that they don't have a problem, and they're going to convince you that they're taking care of it, or it's not really an issue, or they start playing the blame game and do all kinds of messed up stuff to have you believe that you don't need to worry about them. Or if you do, they want to start just blaming you for everything. Maybe you've experienced this and maybe you haven't. If you haven't, it's really just a not yet. So all of these like really horrible things that I talk about in some of these videos or these stories, if you haven't experienced it, it's really just a not yet. Because this is a progressive disease. This is something that gets worse over time. And the only thing that really matters is the actions that you're taking. You can talk to them until you're blue in the face. It's not going to help. So the only thing that people with substance abuse issues can really hear is the actions that you're taking. And the biggest action that you can take for yourself is getting help for yourself, so that you learn how to have these conversations with your son or daughter that you need to be having, and learning how to set the boundaries that you may need to set. And it's like I always say, tough love isn't about being tough on them. It's about making decisions that are tough to do. And so if we haven't worked on your inner strength yet to make some of these tough decisions, then you may not make them, but they are in the betterment for your son or daughter. They can really help. And that's the point of what we're doing here, is helping your son or daughter in the most compassionate and loving way. You don't want to sit here and ruin your relationship with them. You don't want to cost everything and not end up being in a place where you're spending thousands of dollars and not really getting any sort of return. Like people lose their houses, people lose their cars trying to get help for their son or daughter, because they will do anything. And this is the best way to help them, is by helping you, because then you can set the right conditions for them to get the help that they need. And that's what I'm here to help you with, not only just through these videos, blogs, but I have other services that you can reach out and get some of this help that you need. So if you want more information about some of the things that I do and how to contact me, and if you're ready to talk further and just see if there is a way that I can help you, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go to schedulewithjen.com. and schedule an appointment with me. Obviously it's at no cost. It's just a conversation that says, well, what is the next right step for you? Maybe there's a resource that I provide that can really help you, but I would like to at least talk about what the next step will be, even if it's not working with me, because there's a lot of things out there that can really help you in navigating this. So I want you to reach out, because this is not a world that you will understand, but it is a world that I understand and I can help navigate. And that's really important. So most of what I do is just help you develop your strategies to know how to handle someone that is on drugs and what's really going on. And I think when you understand what's really going on with them, you'll understand how to help them better. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you reach out to me and you start scheduling these appointments, because I think it would really help, and it could even potentially save your son or daughter's life. So reach out, schedulewithjen.com. Hope to hear from you soon. If not, I hope this video was at least helpful. Have a good day.